Well, the fact that a petition is launched on Sunday and gets 2 million, or 2.5 million now signatures within 48 hours, I've never seen a petition grow as quickly as this.
But we've had 13 years of Conservative failure, a crashed economy, so we're going to inherit a very difficult programme if we were lucky enough to win the next general election, and therefore we're realistic about what we're able to achieve, but we will change Britain for the better.
A mile wide, an inch deep, but this is what we've talked about the real change that the UK needs, which is a system that is not the first past the post scenario anymore.
4.3 million people have entered the UK since 2010. That's more than the entire population of Birmingham, Manchester and Liverpool combined. Yet politicians keep promising to cut immigration. Why should anyone believe them now? In a shocking live TV confrontation, Nigel Farage exposes the stark reality behind these numbers. Watch as he leaves a UK host speechless with hard-hitting facts about the NHS crisis, housing shortages, and failed immigration policies. This isn't just another political debate, it's a wake-up call for every British citizen. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
I mean, the whole thing's absolutely bonkers, and it needs to be reformed, along with much else in our country.
The house building that I'm proposing at the start of conference that we'll be announcing more this week is about actually giving people secure futures and making sure that we can tackle things like child poverty.
I mean, the whole thing's absolutely bonkers, and it needs to be reformed, along with much else in our country.
20% of our NHS came from overseas. With these words, Nigel Farage dropped a bombshell on live TV, exposing the harsh reality of Britain's healthcare system. The NHS, once the pride of the nation, now relies heavily on foreign talent to keep its doors open. But how did we get here? The government has repeatedly promised to train more British doctors and nurses, yet the numbers tell a different story. Young Brits are turning away from medical careers in droves. Why? Low pay, grueling hours, and a mountain of student debt make becoming a doctor or nurse seem more like a nightmare than a noble calling. It's no wonder the NHS is struggling to fill its ranks with homegrown talent. But it's not just about staffing. The NHS is buckling under the weight of a growing population. Since 2010, the UK has seen an influx of 4.3 million people. That's more than Birmingham, Manchester, and Liverpool combined. This surge has sent caseloads skyrocketing by 43%, leaving overworked staff scrambling to keep up. The result? Longer wait times, frustrated patients, and a healthcare system on the brink of collapse. You might think throwing money at the problem would help. The government certainly has, increasing NHS spending from 7% of the national budget to a whopping 11%. But here's the kicker. Despite this cash injection, the quality of care hasn't improved. In fact, public dissatisfaction with the NHS is at an all-time high. It's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. No matter how much you add, it just keeps draining away. So, what's the real story behind these numbers? Farage didn't pull any punches when he revealed the shocking truth on air. The NHS, he argued, has become a victim of the UK's failed immigration policies. With 4.3 million new arrivals since 2010, despite repeated promises to reduce net migration, the strain on public services has reached a breaking point. But the NHS crisis is just the tip of the iceberg. As we'll see, the ripple effects of unchecked immigration extend far beyond healthcare. Next up, the housing market. Brace yourself for another dose of reality as we explore how the government's grand promises of new homes stack up against the harsh truth of Britain's housing shortage. Imagine waiting years for a home, only to watch new builds go to recent arrivals. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It's the lived experience of thousands of Britons. As Angela Rayner touts ambitious housing targets, we're left wondering, can the UK actually deliver on these promises? And more importantly, who will benefit if they do? Rayner's pledge to build 1.5 million new homes in just 5 years sounds impressive on paper. But Nigel Farage isn't buying it. He's quick to point out the glaring issues with this grand plan. For starters, where are the builders coming from? The UK is already facing a severe shortage of skilled construction workers. It's hard to imagine how we'll suddenly find enough hands to make this housing boom a reality. But the problems don't stop there. Farage argues that even if these homes magically appear, they won't solve the real issues plaguing British citizens. Why? Because a significant portion of these new builds will likely go to immigrants, not the families who've been waiting years for social housing. The numbers paint a grim picture. Thousands of Brits are currently homeless or living in substandard conditions. Many have been on waiting lists for social housing for years, watching as their dreams of a stable home slip further away. Meanwhile, new developments seem to prioritize newcomers over long-term residents. This situation is creating a powder keg of resentment. British citizens feel overlooked and left behind by their own government. They watch as politicians make grand promises about solving the housing crisis, all while their own situations remain unchanged or even worsen. The political implications of this housing debacle are hard to ignore. Trust in government is already at an all-time low. If these ambitious targets aren't met, and let's be honest, the odds aren't looking good, it could be the final straw for many voters. They've heard promises before, only to be let down time and time again. Farage's warnings should be a wake-up call for those in power. Over-promising and under-delivering isn't just bad politics, it's a recipe for social unrest. As the gap between rhetoric and reality grows wider, so does the divide between the government and the people it's meant to serve. The stark realities exposed by Nigel Farage paint a troubling picture of the UK's future. The NHS, once a source of national pride, now leans heavily on overseas workers to stay afloat. Meanwhile, the housing crisis deepens, with millions of Britons struggling to find affordable homes. These issues aren't isolated. They're symptoms of a larger problem rooted in immigration policies that have brought 4.3 million people into the UK since 2010. Farage's challenge to the status quo forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. Can the UK maintain its current immigration levels without further straining public services? The government's repeated promises to reduce net migration have fallen flat, leaving many wondering if meaningful change is possible. As Farage argues, we cannot have limitless numbers of people coming into Britain. It is making us poorer and diminishing our quality of life. This bold statement cuts to the heart of the debate, leaving viewers to ponder the future of UK politics and policy. Will leaders finally address these issues head-on, or will they continue to make promises they can't keep?